Welcome to my very first lesson on the basics of spreadsheet software. I'm going to be using Excel 2013. However, these basics will extend to any spreadsheet software that you may have. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the purpose of a spreadsheet program. This picture is a picture of a ledger book. A ledger book has historically been used to record figures. And then, when recording these figures, one can easily calculate what these figures mean within the ledger book. This is the guiding analogy when we're looking at spreadsheet software. When we use spreadsheet software, specifically Excel, the files we create are called workbooks, just like a ledger book would have been called a workbook. And as a ledger book is arranged by sheets of paper called worksheets, Excel also has a number of worksheets in its workbook. In fact, when you open a new file, or rather create a new file in Excel, you're creating a new workbook. And in that workbook, it will come with 3 pre-established worksheets that you can use. You can add and delete these worksheets in your workbook if you want to. So when we are looking at it, we are looking at it from this analogy of being like a ledger book. Like a ledger book, the purpose of spreadsheet software, or its primary purpose at least, is to quickly calculate values, or to take numerical or measurable data and quickly organize it and calculate it. Each cell inside of an Excel workbook is like a separate calculator. You can plug in various formulas and functions into these cells in order to quickly calculate those figures. So for example, when you're using a cell in Excel, you could do a sum function, which is designated in this particular formula by the sigma symbol. Additionally, you'll see within this equation that I'm using right now that I have algebraic variables like x and z. We can utilize algebraic thinking and formulas in Excel when we're utilizing our spreadsheets. So it's very powerful at taking these basic mathematical concepts, applying them to the ledger book analogy to quickly calculate advanced statistical and mathematical formulas. Additionally, there's a number of functions built in to help us utilize the power of computers. So when we first look at a spreadsheet software program, the very basics of it is that it's arranged by rows and by columns. In Excel, when you look at our rows and columns, you'll notice that the rows are arranged by number, and they're going up and down vertically, and the rows, in fact, span across horizontally. Our columns are arranged by letter, and they are arranged horizontally, but the values that they're going to have within their cells are arranged vertically. So basically, our rows are arranged by number, and they go horizontal, and our columns are arranged by letter, and they go vertically. The next concept we have is the idea of a cell. A cell is the intersection between a column and a row. Each of these cells is considered a variable in Excel. And because they're considered variables, they need to have their own address. So each of these cells has its own address, and that's a combination of the row and the column. So for example, the first cell that crosses with A and 1 would have the cell address 1A or A1. If we go over 1, we could have cell B1, then C1, D1, etc. If we move down a row, we could have A2, B2, C2, etc. Additionally, when we're looking at our Our cells, there's going to be one or more active cells within our worksheet that we're working on in Excel. The active cell will have a border around it. In Excel 2013, it will have this dark green border around it. And currently our active cell is cell C3. Moving on, when we look at the stuff inside each of these cells, they can be distinguished by text and values. Text can be thought of as descriptions, whereas values can be thought of as quantifiers. So with the text, we might use it as a title for a cell, or a title for a row, or maybe a title for a column. Could be used to put the company's name on the spreadsheet, and things like that. So for example, we might have a row header called income. So income would be text. We might have the phrase somewhere in our spreadsheet that says hello world. That would be text. Or we might have a row header called percentage with the percentage sign afterward, and that would also be text. The thing to remember about text is that it cannot be measured or quantified. Therefore, it's not going to be used in calculations. Instead, they're descriptive. Moving on, we have values that are also used in Excel. Values are quantified, and they can be measured, and they are used in mathematical calculations. In Excel, we can use whole numbers or decimal numbers, like the number 45. We can use currency, like $5.60, or we can use dates, like the 13th of September 2012. Additionally, we can use decimals that are formatted as percentages, like 45%. Those are all values because they can be used in mathematical calculations. And those are the basics of Excel. In our next lesson, we'll start to use a little bit of the program.